Hey everyone, Sparks back with another Girls Frontline 2 Exilium video, and it's time for my QiongJiu review video where I go over all of her skills, some strategies with her, good equipment, weapons, keys, all of that. So let's take a deep dive into what you can do with her. She's one of my favorites. So QiongJiu is one of the most valuable units in Girls Frontline 2. She has high stacking values and is great in the center of the map against multiple enemies because of her support attacks. You won't see her shine in easy stages because often you will kill enemies in one hit, but against bosses, your damage will get crazy with her. Her AI is a little weird, so you will get much better use of her when you're playing manually. This kind of goes for all units, but you'll notice it particularly with QiongJiu. So now let's take a look at her class and basic stats really quick. She is a Sentinel, which is the main DPS class for Girls Frontline 2, and she uses medium ammo and burn attacks. She's weak to heavy ammo and freeze. Her stability is a solid 9, and her movement is 5. Now, the movement distance can feel a little restrictive, but there has to be something to balance out her insane action support ability. Speaking of that action support ability, let's take a look at her passive ability first. It's called Steady Plan, and this is the core of what makes her so good. She gains 1 CI point each time she does damage. That's already fantastic. But she also does additional damage to enemies without cover, and anytime, this is a really important thing, anytime an enemy takes damage within her range, she uses action support, which is a follow-up attack after your other unit's attack. So you can think of this almost like getting 7 actions every turn instead of the normal 4. And in missions where you get a team of 5, this is even easier to achieve, and you can end up getting 4 extra actions when you set her up right. Your team's damage output gets crazy, and since she gets CI points every time this happens, because she's dealing damage, you can pop her ultimate nearly any time you want. The key is to position her first where she can hit all the targets, and then you will go for the rest of those targets with your units, your other units. Her ultimate isn't an attack in and of itself, but it's a great buff and only costs 3 CI points. She gains 3 stacks of support boost 2, which increases action support damage. Those are those follow-up attacks I just talked about. And if she's at max CI, she gets a 4th stack and 1 more action support trigger. So ideally you move her to the central location of the map, use the ultimate, support each attack with your other units, dealing crazy damage, which will regen all of her CI, then use the ultimate again the next turn, and rinse and repeat every single time. It's really, really good. Of course, she also has a basic attack or skill 1, which is basic. Use that when you're basic. But of course, she also has a skill 2 and 3. Her skill 2 deals burn damage to 1 enemy and has a nice long range of 8. It also gives her a support boost buff, which makes all her action support attacks even stronger. Skill 3 also deals burn damage to 1 unit directly in line with her and applies a overburn effect to the target. This makes them take extra damage at the end of the turn, kind of like a poison damage over time effect. One of her keys will make it hit every enemy in the line instead of just 1, but honestly it's probably not worth it. Skill 3 is strong but awkward to use because a lot of the time it can be hard to get directly in line with the enemies and still stay in cover, not to mention staying in range of all your other units to do action supports. Basically, use skill 2 or 3 when you're not in a position to be able to hit all your action supports with her ultimate. Most of the time, it will probably be that skill 2. So for gear, I would highly recommend her signature weapon, the Golden Melody. This can be tough to get since it's not, there's no rate up or a selection box unless you drop $50. So, I mean, if you do that, it's probably going to be one of your best choices to select from that. But this is definitely best in slot and gives her a damage increase percentage for everything, plus an additional support attack buff that also stacks with the buff from her skill 2. If you don't have it, she's still great, but this really puts her into overdrive. For attachments, do a combination of burn boost and ballistic boost. If you're really leaning into the fire team thing, which I'll talk about more in a second, maybe focus on those burn boost attachments or even phase strike. Otherwise, you'll probably get more value out of ballistic boost, which will benefit all her action supports. Now let's take a quick look at keys. She has some great options. Her final common key is pretty great, as it boosts damage on all of her action support attacks. The one that starts her with 3 CI is great as well, and the one that removes a buff from enemies before each support action is probably her best. This will be extremely useful in later stages. Lastly, the defense down key is tied for her best key probably. This is crazy because it debuffs the enemy's defense before the allied attack happens. So then they're going to take 2 hits with having that lower defense effect. Now, in making a team, you have a lot of options with QiongJiu. She will be good on literally any team. The only time she might not be so great is if the map makes it really hard for her to use action supports because there's too many obstacles or something like that. I mentioned a fire team earlier, and there are great options even if you don't have any other elite units. In fact, if you're making a fire team, you're going to be using fewer elite units than you otherwise might be. So I would try QiongJiu, Sharkery, Ksenia, and then your 4th unit can be anyone. Ideally it's Suomi because she's just insane and will help make up for QiongJiu's relatively bad stability damage. Tulolo is also kind of busted because she gets extra turns and will pop off even more action supports from QiongJiu. Otherwise, there are a couple of other burn units like Krolik and Cheetah. I'll also give a shout out to rifle users and vanguards like Nemesis and Vepley because they will make it easier to hit enemies on different ends of the map while QiongJiu stays like parked in the middle and then she can hit everything else around her. Going back to the fire team idea, between Sharkery and Ksenia, you'll be doing a crazy amount of support actions because you get extra commands with Sharkery, and Ksenia has a similar action support ability to QiongJiu. A great combo with the burn team is opening up with QiongJiu's ultimate, Ksenia's skill 2, which applies flammable and overburn, then Sharkery's ultimate that buffs her and gives her an extra attack, and then follow that up with one of her other skills like 2 or 3. Now, if you're trying to fill out that burn team, I will give one note about Krolik. Even though she's generally considered kind of weak, she has some unique strategic opportunities with her ultimate that moves her ahead spaces. This was a cool trick for trapping the boss in the level 2 of Hazard Patrol in the event. This is easily one of the first kind of like skill testers or bottleneck kind of stages where, you know, you kind of have to play manually or think about how to do it. And she can like keep the boss from jumping back and forth behind that cover. So that's kind of a cool thing you can do. Anyway, there are a lot of opportunities with QiongJiu. She's my personal favorite unit. Let me know if you have any questions or anything to add in the comments below. A subscription would be really appreciated. I'll be doing Girls Frontline 2 videos for a long time, and I will see you guys in the next video or on stream.